Alright guys, let's get started here. My name's Chad. I'm the designer, developer of Hookup Baits. I'm only partial owner. JoJo's actually the owner of Hookup Baits. She is the boss. She is the one that makes Hookup Baits possible for all of us to use. But I'm the main pro staff and developer. So I get to fish for a living basically. I go to tackle shops throughout the state and into other neighboring states. I get to visit tackle shops, talk about fishing. When I'm not talking about fishing, I am fishing. So it's basically talking fish for a living.
Always see that boat in the bay, always.
What's that?
Always see that boat in the bay fishing.
Yeah, it's actually on the bay less now than it has in the last 8 years, unfortunately, but because we're trying to expand into other areas. So I get to do that for a living. So I get asked what I do for a living, when I'm doing my seminars and visiting different clubs and different stores. And it used to always be I make the best lure in the world. But then after 8 years being in business and seeing so many stories of my kid now loves to fish, my daughter loves to fish, my wife loves to fish now, stories like that, and then stories of the best day on the water with my buddies ever, using Hookup Baits. After a while, I was like, man, I love all these memories. I mean, and those messages never get old, either in person or on our social media pages. And after a while, I was like, man, I create memories more than anything. And so I kind of take pride in that. Of nowadays, people ask me, I was like, I manufacture memories for a living. Memories on the water, and I take a lot of pride in that. So, and all that is possible because we make a lure that is very effective, and it works for every fish that swims, freshwater and saltwater, and anybody can use it. Very simple to use. There's no wrong way of using a hookup bait. So it makes it very easy to make memories on the water, so you can give it to a kid, and just him dropping it in the water doing nothing, he's going to outfish you half the time, right? You can give it to your wife. She don't have to touch a fish. You don't have to do anything. She goes in the water and she reels in a fish. It makes memories, more than anything else. And that if you are a good fisherman and you figure out how to use the lure, yeah, it's going to be the best thing in the world. You're going to catch more fish than you ever have in your life. I grew up in California fishing my whole life. I've been a pro staff fisherman since I was 16 years old, mostly trout fishing, but also worked on boats as a teenager. Basically my neighborhood, that's what we did, we fished. So I've been a hardcore fisherman for 51 now, so 40 something years, right? And that's part of what Hookup Baits developed, of just through a lot of time on the water and stuff like that. But using everything that's out there for many, many years, and really, I have not tied anything else on my line over the last 8 years but a hookup bait. And I fish from British Columbia down into Baja, coast to coast, freshwater and saltwater. I use nothing but a hookup bait. The end result is the same no matter where I fish and what I'm fishing for. You might have to change size and color or technique a little bit, but a hookup bait will catch fish anywhere you go. In a river, in a stream, trolling, you can fish it deep, you can fish it shallow, you can ice fish it. I've done all these. You can troll it behind downriggers and flashers. There is absolutely nowhere in fishing where you can't use a hookup bait. Alright? So, we'll go over a few things about the bait itself. So, let me grab it here. I'll grab this one. So, people always see a hookup bait and say, oh, it's just super simple. It's a tube bait. Well, yeah, it's a tube bait. That's about the only thing it has in common with anything else out there. A lot of people say, oh, it's a gets it. Those have been around forever. Yeah, like I said, when I was a pro staff fisherman when I was 16, I was fishing tube baits. That's the poor guy that made tube baits. John Bill, Crappie John. That's the guy that got me into fishing tube baits. He was my mentor back when I was 16 years old, right? And that's a tube bait with all the tails, right? That's all the tube baits you ever see, the gets it and everything else, all the tails. The only thing that this is the same as any kind of tube bait you ever seen is about that much of the hollow body. That's it. And that they're made of plastic. That's about all there is. That's the same. The action is completely different. The look of the bait is completely different. But it's mainly that action. So when I developed these baits, I spent 2 months, 10 to 15 hours a day, mad scientist, making this bait. I had the idea in my head. JoJo was the one that made it, say, yeah, let's do this business together. And I got to let that idea in my head. And I wasn't stopping until I developed this. This is what I had in my head, was this design. And I never did plastic before, self-taught, learned how to do plastic, learned how to pour and dip and color and, you know, do all the different stuff. I tried all the different lead heads, many different types of plastic, until I got that action right. And there was a lot of swimming pool. I had a swimming pool in my backyard. A lot of times just in that swimming pool casting it and then going in the swimming pool with goggles on and watching the fall, watching the retrieve, all that kind of stuff. And I had the idea in my head that if you made a lure that gets hit equally well on the fall, and then on the retrieve, you would have the most versatile, most effective lure ever. You know, as soon as it hits the water, it's doing its action to get hit. Now you're retrieving, and it's still doing its action to get hit. There's really no lure on the market that actually does that. So while I was in the water, I had tube bait, you know, making the ones with the tails like this, and trying to find a new body design to make it do all this action. And watching the tube bait fall in the water. If you watch a tube bait fall under the water with all the tails, right, they go like this as they're falling. They are L-shaped, and all the tails are sitting there doing this, and it's falling. So it totally loses its natural profile of a fish when it's falling through the water column. I've never seen an L-shaped fish in my life, right? So it loses profile first of all, but then also it loses the plane of the bait, right? You know, it's not plane. You think of like a hull of a boat, right? So a hookup bait, because it has a more rigid body, when it's falling, it'll slightly raise, so it keeps its natural profile look, right? It still looks like a real thing. The profile is huge on fishing. If your profile of your lure is not correct, you're going to get a whole lot less bites, right? So it keeps its profile, keeps its natural look. But then because it keeps its profile, like I said, like a hull of a boat, so it glides 10 times more than any tube bait with all the tails are going to glide on, because it just planes it out a whole lot more, all right? Now another thing that kind of actually happened accidentally, but it made the baits very effective also, is once I noticed it, I actually changed hook sizes and changed plastic a little bit to make it do this. But the baits sit exactly in the water like this. When you just hold it straight up and down, vertical, the bait will sit like this in the water, right? Almost every bait you ever get out there is going to sit like this, you know, straight up like this in the water, right? So when your bait gets down to the bottom, just lifting it off the bottom just a little bit, it's going to be sitting just like all other fish in the water. This is how fish sit. They're just sitting on top of the structure. They're either gliding around or just sitting. They're sitting like that, right? So the bait sits very natural in the water. So you can do actually nothing with it. Just the motion of the boat, sitting there having this thing going around, it's going to get hit just being there, right? Then you start retrieving it, and it has all kinds of crazy darting action. So fish, if you ever watch fish in a lake or in a tank or whatever, most of the time they are just sitting and kind of just gliding around, right? If they want to move to a spot, they rarely use their tail much. It's more of the pectoral fins, and they just kind of glide to the next spot. So a hookup bait does a lot of real natural look glides. And then when it gets down there, then it just kind of sits and glides around. But then when the fish is being chased by something else, they're going to do all this darting action and, you know, kind of thing. So as soon as you do some of this with a hookup bait, it's darting and doing all that. So it copies every action that a fish does, a hookup bait does, right? So it's the only lure in the world that gets hit actually on the fall, when it's just sitting in the water, and on the retrieve. So the minute the lure hits the water, it's doing its action. Gets down there, it's doing its action. All the way back to the boat, it's doing its action. There's no other lure that does that. That's what makes a hookup bait so effective. A swim bait hardly gets hit on the fall, then you got to crank it. Especially if you're fishing deep structure, you know, where these big bass sit on this 90-foot structure. Say, here's the rock. You throw your swim bait, it doesn't get hit, it hits the bottom, you start cranking it. You're like, oh, you're in the zone, you're in the zone, now you're out of the zone. So only a quarter of your cast is actually in the bite zone, where that bait's doing what it's supposed to do, and it's in the zone where the fish are at. With a hookup bait, you're in the zone, you hit the bottom, you can kind of hold it there for a little bit, give jigs, you're still in the zone, and then you're cranking out of the zone, you're still out of the zone about halfway up to the boat. So you're in the zone 75% more with the bait doing its action in the zone. So it makes it very effective for fishing deep structure. That's where we fish a lot of our saltwater bass tournaments. I've been saltwater bass fishing now for 7 years. We've been the champion of the saltwater bass series 5 years. So we are the most winningest saltwater bass team in California, by far. There's no one that can touch us, okay? And I'm not saying that to brag, I'm just saying that because we 100% use hookup baits against guys that are using everything out there for bass, saltwater bass, including the knockoffs, and they cannot compete. Just the last tournament, the guys that actually won the Calico Bass Tournament here in San Diego, they've been fishing knockoffs for the last couple of years. They switched to hookup baits this year, and they're like, we get it. We got what I know what you're talking about now. Knockoffs will not cut it, guys. They don't make baits like we do. And with this next bass tournament, if you're fishing knockoffs, you're gonna get smoked by everyone that's fishing hookup baits. I can promise you that. All right? So, and they're legally naked. We have 4 patents on these. If it remotely even looks like a hookup bait, you're buying a legal bait. They are absolutely breaking the law just by making it. Okay? So, and you're supporting them by buying their baits. So, we spent a lot of money for that. We took a lot of pride in that. We did to protect ourselves because we knew what we had when I developed it. And so, that's just how it is. You're buying knockoff baits, you're buying illegally made baits. Alright? So, let's get into some fishing. So, saltwater bass stuff is pretty much our go-to thing. And I saltwater bass a lot, you know, and this year alone I'm in 3 different series that are all saltwater bass series that go, you know, for 6 to 8 months. It's gonna make you fish, think about doing things differently or improving your game. Think about your game plan that much more. Think about what baits, what size baits, you know. Think about trying new places, finding new zones. It's gonna do all that. When you're just pleasurably going out and catching fish, yeah, we love to catch fish. It's cool. You put tournament on top of that, competition on top of that, plus money on top of that, it just makes you try that much more. Then plus, when you fish the tournaments, you know, there's a lot of, you know, talk after the tournaments and stuff, or you see the guys on the water and they ended up doing good. You learn a lot just from the other anglers, especially the ones that are doing well. And that's one cool thing about saltwater bass compared to freshwater bass. Everything in freshwater bass world is a super secret. They don't say anything to anybody, and if they do, it's a lie. Where I know since saltwater, it's totally different. We talk to each other. We're like, yeah, I caught them on this. We caught them at this depth, and so it's kind of a cool, pretty cool different vibe. We're not going to tell you the whole story, but we're going to tell you a lot of it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of cool about saltwater bass, and I'm the same way, especially if you're using hookup baits. I'm going to tell you everything I possibly know to help you out catch more fish on a hookup bait. So that's part of why I'm here doing seminars for you guys. Just at Fred Hall last week, I did 13 seminars at Fred Hall, all on using hookup baits. Total, the shows this year, I did 25 seminars just at the trade shows this year. Not including all the seminars I do, like I said, all the clubs all over the place. So I really love to help people catch fish using our products. It's a passion of mine. We love hearing about how well people do with the baits. So I try to help all I can, and yeah, I pretty much tell most of exactly what we do on the water. I share with you. If you actually look at these baits, they're chewed up. These are still the baits I had tied on from my last bass tournament. I haven't changed anything on these are actually my tournament setup right here. I haven't changed anything. It's still the baits I had fishing, still a leader I had. So this is exactly how I was set up when I was fishing my last tournament here in San Diego. All right? So this bait right here, it's a new bait. This is a 2 ounce, 2 ounce, 6 inch bait. So most of you guys have probably used the big game bait, right? This is the 1.5, actually this is a 1 ounce big game. So you see the bait's not too much bigger. The new 2 and 3 ounce we made. So that's a 5 inch bait, that's a 6 inch bait. Right? But now these come in 2 and 3 ounces. And I've been using this 2 ounce one actually for many years. We actually, as the Hookup Bait team, used to call it the TW series. TW meaning Tournament Winner Series, because we have won a lot of tournaments on that 2 ounce bait. And it was one of my little secrets. Right? And then finally JoJo says, okay, you had it to yourself long enough, we need to put it out to our customers. So actually these came out on Black Friday. We brought out the 2 and 3 ounce, but being at the end of the season, you know, they didn't really take off. Everyone's kind of done saltwater fishing then. But since the show started, we cannot make enough of these right now. We keep selling out. We brought, I think, a couple of them to tonight, but they already got sold. So we are sold out of these, but we're always constantly making more today. You're making more today, right, Ronnie?
Yes.
He's the shop supervisor, so.
Yeah, I gotta go back to work after this. Oh, shit.
So it's really hard to keep these 2 and 3 ounce in stock right out there. Very effective. But this one in particular, this we call it the chub. I actually made it for trout fishing. This color for fishing trout in Utah and Pyramid Lake and all that. But they eat chubs. But that color, the white with the brown on it, also mimics a squid very well, right? And then the size of that mimics a squid very well. So up in Santa Barbara or Ventura and northward, the guys fishing the squid beds up there were using the 1.5s, this size, but in this color last year. And they were saying, yeah, it's working really well, but most squid beds are in that 75 to 120 foot range. And so and with sea bass, you don't want to fish the double rig. I'll explain that in a minute. So they're just doing a single 1.5, taking too long to get to the bottom, can't really fill the bottom good enough and all that stuff, but they're catching sea bass and they're like, we just had one a little bit heavier. So I was already planning on bringing out these 2 and 3 ounce. So I was like, I'm going to bring it out in the chub also, just because for the squid ground fishing, all right? So I don't know if you guys seen, maybe it was about 2.5 months ago, we found a squid bed here in San Diego. We just went out to fish a CCA bass tournament. That was about 2.5 months ago. And I caught 7 calicos over 6 pounds in one day, and plus multiple 2 to 4 pound calicos and sand bass. We probably caught 200 bass that day, almost all of them on this chub, 2 ounce chub. And if that 2 ounce chub got anywhere near that squid bed, it was eaten instantly, all right? And we're using doubles like this. When you catch a single, it was always on the squid one. When we catch doubles, so they're basically only eating the other one when you catch a double, right? I'll explain actually how that works with a double rig here. So this double rig, we kind of made this rig famous through the Hookup Baits, right? And I developed this way back when I first started tournament fishing 7 years ago. You're catching a calico bass, a 2 pound calico bass, and reeling it in, there's a 4 or 5 pounder following them, right? Especially tournament fishing, you're dealing at your buddy, you know, get your bait there, oh, you know, and then by the time he gets his bait there, the bass is gone almost every single time, right? So I was like, I need to develop a system so I have my bait there for that other fish to eat, right? Because calico bass, sand bass are always like that. When one is on there excited, there's always a follower. So I started tying different ways, using every swivel on the market, really playing with it until I found the right everything, until I got it perfected, right? And so this is still, I perfected this probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it's still how we do it today. It works absolutely fantastic. So this Owner 3-way #2 swivel is the best swivel you can possibly use to do this set. Anything less, we have broken, especially when you got 2 6 pound bass on there. They're all over the place, rolling up in your line, and doing all this kind of stuff. So most people are like, well, that's a 150 pound swivel. Well, yeah, that's tested when they're pulling straight on it. When you got 2 bass on there doing all kinds of angles and all kinds of stuff, yeah, that 150 pound swivel breaks, right? We have never broke this Owner swivel. We have not broken one yet. We've caught yellowtail, sea bass, and everything else on it. Not 2 at a time, but we have caught them on it, right?
Is that fluoro or what is that?
I'll tell you all that in a minute.
Hang on, Fox.
So that Owner swivel, the only problem with them, they're hard to find. We did a really good job at marketing them, and so they're hard to find. So Owner calls us first. When they got 3-way swivels come in, we usually buy most of the whole batch. So we got a ton of them, but they're hard to find anywhere else. So I got 2 boxes of them here tonight. So make sure you got that Owner 2-way swivel. It's just like fishing 1 bait, but you're fishing 2, all right? And we won so many tournaments fishing this double rig. We hook the one first fish, and we'll sit there. All right, you usually know the size of it within the first little run. Okay, he's a 2 pounder. Then we'd slow line it. Even if it's really small, we already have a whole bag of fish, we'll even open the bell, let him back down. Then slow line them again. And use that bass that's on this one, sitting there going crazy and everything, that's getting the attention of all the bass around them, getting them fired up. And because our baits run so straight and true, this bait is just sitting there following that excited fish around. That bigger bass comes in to investigate, he's fired up and he's like, oh, look at that. And then he jumps on, then you're like, oh, okay, there's the one I was looking for. Then you reel them both in, right? That second one is always the bigger bass that normally wasn't gonna bite, but now he's fired up and he bit, right? So, won a lot of tournaments with this system, but then Also, the other reason to do it, when you're on the boat with your buddies, right? All of us do this on my boat. We all use two different colors. Okay, what color you got? Oh, I got, chub and a rainbow trout. Okay, I'm gonna use sardine and mint. Okay, I'm gonna use red crab and purple, right? So that way, the color of the day changes every day. It actually changes from spot to spot. I've had times where you get on one rock and it's all the orange and red is biting out crazy because there's a bunch of shrimp on that rock. Then you go to the next one, the orange or red won't even be touched, but the sardine is on fire. So it changes from spot to spot. My theory on that is the color of the day is whatever the fish are feeding on that day, right? If there's anchovy in the area, the anchovy and the purple is going to get bit really well, and the shad white. If they're sardine, the rainbow trout, the sardine is going to get the red crab. Of course, the red crab and the orange is getting bite. Or if there's a lot of shrimp around, red crab and the orange, the pink, that kind of stuff. So it changes just by what bait those fish are feeding on each rock pile you go to. It changes from rock pile to rock pile, actually. So with 4 different guys using 8 different colors, oh man, they're really biting this one here. Okay, cool. And if you catch one, you'll notice if you have 2 different colors on, I always fish 2 different colors. You'll notice when you catch one, it's always on that one color. It'll be this one again, and you'll get a double. Doubles don't count, because he ate that other one because he's excited. But it's the singles. You watch the singles. The singles, every time come up on one, then you get, and we always just call it out. We're reeling the fish on the sardine, on the rainbow trout. And you just kind of keep milling. Man, you're sure getting a lot of them on that rainbow trout. Yeah, they're hitting that one, not my other one. Okay, so now I got a rainbow trout and a sardine on there. Now they're hitting both my baits, right? So it's a really easy way to figure out what the color of that rock pile. You used to say color of the day, but now it's what the color of that rock pile they're biting on, right? So that's another very effective way of using the double rig, or effective thing of using the double rig. But then the other thing is it adds more weight. This comes into effect with rock fishing, right? So last year we did some rockfish tournaments, me and Danny Higley and then a couple other judges, I think Ronnie, and we were fishing 500 feet, a little over 500 feet, right? Using double rigs, on spinning reel, using a 6 ounce and a 4 ounce, or a 6 and a 3, right? And we're catching 6 to 8 pound reds, 2 at a time, every single drop, right? And that's the thing with you can use a heavy weight. With bass fishing, a lot of times I like to go similar weight. So the bass last week, we're mostly 100 to 120 feet at the last tournament. That's why I got 2 and a 1.5. But I typically, with bass fishing, I want the same weight. So both baits come falling together. Like I said, half the magic of these baits is that glide and the fall. So if you have 2 the same weight, they're going down and they're swimming around each other and it looks all beautiful, right? When you do 2 different weights, now this one is towing that one down. So you're losing the sink of the lighter bait. It's just kind of following the one that's doing all the glide down. But when you get to the bottom, now this is almost kind of like a drop shot. So that one's weighting down, this one's going to float out a little bit, and this one's going to swim a little. So that's when you get that bite gets bit, or that bait that gets bit, or when you get a fish on there and it gets excited and he bites the other one. So with rock fishing, a lot of times I go a heavy one and a light one, just to get the bait down there and get fish. With bass, I typically go both the same color, the same size. So like I said, this is 2 and 1.5, that's my deep water rig, and here's my shallow water rig. It'll be 2 5/8. If you're not getting bit, the 2 5/8 is always like a finesse. They'll always bite at 5/8. They love that 5/8. If you're not getting bit, throw that double 5/8 out there and just let it float. It's going to take you longer to get down there, but it's slower going down through the water column. A lot more natural, a lot more time in the water column. So a lot of times it's a finesse bait of when it bites tough, throw that double 5/8. That's going to get bit. It's going to take you longer to get to the zone to get bit, but it's going to get bit when it gets there. Where this is a little bit faster fishing bait, sinks faster, and you're in the zone faster and stuff like that. So when they're biting, yeah, I do the heavy ones, just so you're there faster. You can bring it back faster. When it's really slow, do that double 5/8. That's going to get bit when nothing else is getting bit. All right. Technique for bass and rockfish is always on the drift, always on the move. A lot of people, I got the trolling motor and everything on my tournament boat, obviously. I rarely ever use spot lock, ever. Spot lock is actually your enemy don't use spot lock. Everyone's always said that, and I used to say it too until I actually got it. Man, if I could just park on this rock, I'd kill him. No, you won't. I promise you, you won't. Right? But spot lock is awesome for controlling your drift. Right? This will slow your drift down, and you can control your direction of your drift and stuff like that. If you see an upcoming rock or an upcoming place where you put your pin on your navionics, that's the other thing. If you're not using navionics, you're cheating yourself. How many private boat owners, private boat fishermen do we have? Alright, so that's what I figured. A lot of private boat guys, right? So, navionics, especially if navionics with the relief shading, is cheating. It basically is cheating nowadays. It shows you every rock out there, and then you use your track to show your yellow line that follows you. You catch a drift, it's very easy to go right back onto that same drift and do it again. You put your pins where you've caught fish before, so as you drift along, you can, oh, there's a pin there, and you can use the trolling motor. You're drifting this way, oh, there's a pin over here, you can just kind of, now you're drifting towards that pin, right? So you can control your drift of where you want to go, and then the speed of your drift. But I absolutely hate my boat sitting still. That's like, I rarely ever do that. And that's the mistake I see a lot of people do. Boat positioning is everything. Well, a lot of our tournaments we win, you know, the guys that win, they always ask, what was the biggest critical thing today? My answer every time is boat positioning and hookup baits. But boat positioning is very important. I mean, to me, it's like one of the most important things. If you're not positioning your boat right to present your bait to that structure pile, even though that don't matter what you're using in the world, you're not going to catch the fish as well. And the biggest thing, if your boat isn't overfished, I don't care what you're using, you're not going to catch a fish, right? Boat positioning is everything, and navionics tells you everything you need to know to work, what you're going to position your boat to, and then how to set up on it. And then the rest of that is just time on the water, using your boat, controlling your drift, figuring out, okay, now we're catching fish, how am I related to that structure right now? And then try to mimic it over and over again. One big secret also, on all our ARs, right here, all those AR piles out there, they're all 25 to 60 feet. You only get one pass over those. And if you park on them, you'll get 2 or 3 fish, and you don't get a catch no more. As soon as you drift over them, don't even bother resetting on them. Even if you got a double or triple hookup, the next time you go over it, you might catch one, but you're just wasting time. You go over a new pile, then you're going to get a double or triple hookup again. And then the next one. A new rock pile is always the most productive. Once your boat goes over it, I mean, you're only 25 feet up, they see you. And they see their buddy get caught, right? Whatever. Something that makes them unhappy. Because you try it again, man, this thing was just on fire just a second ago. Well, yeah, because they know that you're there now. And they're just going to watch you float over them the next time, right? So, do yourself a favor. Don't float over, especially shallow. My whole thing is if they're 75 feet or under, I always only one shot. And I tell my people on the boat, okay, you got one shot. It's right there. We all cast on it. You'll catch a fish, come over it, all right, on to the next. That's it, right? So, I see just a lot of people out there sit in one spot too long. They use spot lock too much, and then they sit there and go over the same spot over and over. Big key to tournament fishing, obviously, the more spots you have, the better. And just make a game plan. Before tournament day, I have my navionics out and I'm laying in bed the night before, and I'm going here, then 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 here, here, and then I might go back to here. That's my game plan, is hitting as many spots as I can, and that's how you're going to catch the most fish, especially bass. And then the shallower they are, the more you've got to pay attention to that. All right? And then if I'm fishing a pipeline, I never stop on a pipeline. I use my trolling motor, but I'm using the route, right? You point your boat that way, and you hit route, and you give it the speed you want to go in that route. So it's a constant work. I have, on my boat, I got a 17-inch tablet. This is a Samsung tablet. I run my navionics on that 17-inch tablet that's mounted on my boat. Then I have my fish finder, my 17-inch fish finder or whatever it is. Right below that, I'm using 100% as a fish finder. Then I have my control, do my trolling motor right next to that. Then I have the control that's in, well, actually, it was around my neck to my lanyard rope, so now it's in my pocket. And so I have two remotes, and they watch so when I'm fishing, I'm casting and letting it sink, adjusting, looking at the structure, adjusting, looking at my map, okay, adjust, catch my fish, come back, as soon as I catch a fish, do whatever I'm gonna do with it, I'm going back and I'm adjusting again. So if you're the captain of the boat, it's a busy thing. You're adjusting, you're fishing, you're adjusting, you're catching a fish, you're adjusting. And so you adjust that boat to where the wind and current, say, is blowing this way, but the pipe is going this way. You make your boat go right down that pipe by just having the trolling motor against the current, but you're going down the pipe, not staying still or whatever. So I'm constantly traveling down the pipe where every time I cast from here to the shutters there, or the door, by the time my bait hits, it's like right here. I bounce it twice, reel it back up, then the next cast. So you're just leapfrogging each cast. Each cast is on the structure though. That's the important thing, is you're on structure.
Thanks for having us.
I'm not boring you?
No, we have to leave.
Yeah, we just have to go. I'm sorry.
All right, good seeing you boys.
Have a good night, guys.
We got a hot day.
He knows how to read.
Yeah, they learn to read. Studs now.
I'm here to pick you up.
Don't be late.
Telling you, even on the pipe, my whole thing is every tournament that's involved in Imperial Pipe in the last 7 years in San Diego, we have one. If it includes the pipe, we have won a tournament in San Diego. In my opinion, that pipe, when it is biting, is the best place you can catch bass in California.
You're not fishing this tournament on the 22nd, right?
Of course he is.
No, but we are.
But yeah, that pipe is loaded with big bass, but it's heavily pressured.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we'll go out there in our saltwater bass series tournaments, and there'll be 30 pipes on 30 boats on the pipe. Most guys are struggling to catch a limit, and we catch a 25-pound limit, right? And they're like, we were right there. How did you guys do that? And we did it. My answer every time?
Hookup Baits.
Boat cast, boat positioning. Because I see a lot of guys on work, they're lined up on the pipe, and you see a lot of guys floating across the pipe, then floating back across, then floating back across. Where my boat is on that pipe 100% of the time, every single cast is landing on the pipe. If you're going back and forth, only half your casts are actually landing in the right spot. That pipe is like an island in the middle of a desert. Right? It's all around that pipe, there's nothing. It's mud. But that pipe has a ton of structure, but it's only, I was out there one time when these guys that were inspecting the pipe, they had cameras down there off a boat and stuff, and they hit me on the radio and say, hey, we're doing an inspection on the pipe. And the guy was actually really cool. And so I'm like, yeah, what are you seeing down there? We're seeing bass, but it's mostly perch. There's perch like everywhere. But, we're seeing bass here and there and that. So I asked him, what does the pipe look like? And he says, the jetties that are at the beaches? I go, yeah. And he goes, that's exactly what it is. Basically a jetty that's underwater. Same width, same height. And I'm like, perfect. That's what I imagined it looked like, but now I know exactly what it looks like. It's a jetty underwater. So you imagine, the length, width of it is probably the width of this room. So if you're casting just 5 feet on that side of it, 5 feet on that side of it, you're out of the zone. The fish are sitting right here. So making every cast be right here is huge. I mean, making every cast count. That's going to make a difference in tournament fishing. All right? So catch 2 bass at a time. Why catch 1 when you catch 2? And plus that 2 is going to be bigger. We actually, another thing we do is go down the coast, all the way down to Ensenada with my boat, fishing the coast. And that's one thing I can tell you, if you got navionics, as soon as you cross the border, all that really shading detail goes away. So in Mexico, you're back to just finding stuff on your own.
Why is that? I've got the card that's supposed to get me down to
Yeah, I bought all that stuff, every Mexican, mapping thing, none of them have what they have. And then I even called Navionics, what's the deal? And they're like, oh, well, it should have it on there. They don't even know. So,
I know.
you do? What's the answer to that?
Mexico wants a royalty for their charting.
Is that what it is? So no one wants to pay the royalty?
They don't want to pay the royalties.
Jeez. Well, there you go. That's why it's not on there. Yeah, so as soon as you get down there, it's down to just covering area and finding spots by fishing. I spent a lot of time down there over the last 3 years. Because I get bored fishing this thing. Basically every rock from the border to Oceanside, I know now, so I got bored. I wanted to go find new areas, so I started going that way and finding everything I can that way, which made it much harder because I didn't have anybody else to tell me about everything. But now I found a ton of spots. I have spots all down there, and we kept down there. We kept a lot of bass. Actually, Wayne Cotto, he fishes with a lot with me. He's a good friend, and he's the one that actually made me put a clicker on my boat. He goes, because nobody will believe you guys when you say how many fish you catch on your boat. So I'm putting a clicker. So he gave me a handful of clickers. He goes, here, I want a clicker on your boat all the time and click it. And so when he fishes with us, he's the one. He's like, click it, click it. He makes sure he's the one that trained us to click the clicker every time someone catches a fish. So we started clicking fish, and our best day was not last year, the year before. Wayne was on this trip, and we caught 556 bass in one day, 4 guys. And that's because we're counting 2 at a time, 4 guys, all day long. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. At the end of the day, the clicker said 556 bass.
Bet you were tired.
And but the average day, when we are counting on the clicker, our average day is around 200 bass. That's the average day on my boat, catching bass with the double. So you catch a lot of fish. When you're counting by 2, it adds up a whole lot quicker than counting by 1. All right? So I was going to tell you the technique. So that's with bass, with the trolling motor, controlling your drift. So rockfish are a little bit different. It's a little bit deeper, and the rock is more wide a lot of times, or more bigger area. So you're going to park up drift, obviously, from the rock bottom or the hard bottom. You're going to be coming drifting up to it. And I get people to ask, like, well, that's only 4 ounces. How are you getting down 300 feet with 4 ounces? Well, because I'm not dropping it like you do with a torpedo sinker and the shrimp flies, right? You're not dropping it and letting it scope out that way. What you're doing, you're actually casting. And you're using bass type setup rods. Say the boat is drifting this way, right? You're coming up on the rock height. You want to cast out a 45 off each end of the boat, which is usually best, right? You want to be on the back corner or the bow, and you can do about a 45. Not a super long cast. It all depends on the speed of the drift and how deep it is. It's kind of, you estimate how far you need to cast, right? So usually it's just a little 25, 30-yard cast. So it's sinking. As it's sinking, the boat is coming this way, right? So that gives it more of the free sink. Instead of your paying out line that's taken up for the drift, while it's sinking, that's going to take longer to sink. If it's sinking as you're floating toward it, it's sinking totally free. You have to have slack line, that's sinking very fast because it has slack line, and it's going straight down, and then you come over it. By the time you hit bottom, it's going to be about right here, right? With rockfish, when it hits bottom, I'm just doing slow crank. The baits have a ton of action, especially in the ocean, because you're doing this kind of thing. That's all the action the baits need. They're just gliding up and gliding down. So I don't do all this kind of stuff. You're just wearing yourself out. You're not really going to make a fish bite by going like this. Much better than just slow winding. And that slow winding is you're gonna feel everything. When you're not moving your rod and you're holding your rod still, you can feel that little, nipping at it, chasing it, swimming by it. You feel all that just doing a slow wind. So I like to fill my baits, slow wind it about 10 times, open it up, let it fall again. Now I'm here, hit the bottom, slow wind it up about 10 times, open it up, hit the bottom, slow wind it up, right? You get about 3 to 4 of those, up and down, 10 cranks, down, up, 10 cranks, down. Once your line starts going this way, where you're dragging it, your cast is over. Reel it back up and pitch it back down. You rarely reach the 4th drop with a hookup bait. If you're over a hard bottom and there's fish there, you're catching fish right here. It rarely takes you longer to here to catch fish, right? So this is the fish catching zone. This is what I always tell them, stay in the fish catching zone. That's right here, where you can feel the bottom good, you can feel the bites good, everything else. As soon as you get into that area, it's hard to feel the bottom anymore. Now you're actually slow trolling your jig. Now you're letting line out so they can't feel the bottom. Now you're getting snagged. So you can still catch fish in this zone, but it's much more productive in this zone. So stay in the fish catching zone, stay out of the snag zone. I don't mind you going in the snag zone, but you guys won't like being in the snag zone, all right? So reel back up, and a lot of you get lazy. Like, well, I don't want to reel up 300 feet. Well, okay. You might leave it down there and catch a fish or catch a snag, but you're probably going to catch a fish if you reel it back up, flip it back down, and get back into the fish zone much quicker than you are dragging it along the bottom, right? So And then, like I said, we did that last year, over 500 feet. We're doing that and using big, actually I was using this setup right here, fishing 500 foot rock fish with this. So this is my yellowtail stick, right? I've been trying to tell people for years that a yellowtail eats a hookup bait just as fast as a calico bass does. I promise you it does, right? I fished California all my life for yellowtail. I got into the iron throwing stuff for many years, fishing live squid. On my first boat, I lived up in Riverside. That's all I did was fish Catalina with live squid. That's when there was always live squid at Catalina. Using live squid on the squid grounds, doing all that kind of stuff, right? I have never caught so many and big yellowtail since I started hookup baits, right? And then just being at the Coronado Islands and watching what everybody fine lining baits and throwing irons are doing compared to the hookup baits boat, we're 3 to 5 to 1 on every boat around us every single time because we're only throwing hookup baits, right? So I've been trying to tell people hookup baits absolutely crush yellowtail, but we're all designed that yellowtail only eat live bait and an iron, right? I had the same problem when I started hookup baits fishing them in the saltwater, right? I was fishing them in my kayak and I was catching big calicos and big sand bass and halibut and everything else, and people were like, oh, well, yeah, right, you're catching them on a live bait and put your bait in your mouth. People were conditioned in California that calicos only eat a swim bait and a live bait, right? So that's when I started fishing tournaments. It wasn't only until I started with the first tournament season, we were Anglers of the Year and won the championship. People were like, okay, maybe there is something to that. Then we won the championship again the second year. Then people were like, okay, we're going to use these things in the saltwater. So I've been trying to tell people for years that they do the same exact thing on yellowtail. So I was like, you know what, we need to do yellowtail tournaments. So we joined the Bloody Decks yellowtail shootout last year, right? 75 boats. You can use live bait, you can use whatever you want. You can go anywhere you want from San Diego, right? We were the only boat of the 75 that had no live bait on board. There's never been a piece of live bait that has touched the hookup bait boat. And so we went out just using hookup baits, went out to the Coronado Islands, and we slow troll. You can slow troll these around the Coronado Islands at 4 miles an hour. They troll fantastic. They just sit there and go through the water, do a little, they kind of glide back and forth. They troll fantastic at 4 miles an hour, right? Just as effective as slow trolling a sardine at 1 mile an hour. But you're covering 4 times the area, right? Somebody gets hit. Of course, you take the boat out of gear. The other guy, he just starts as a tree. Bop, 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 bop. Oh, I'm bit too, right? If he makes it back to the boat, same rod in his hand, he's firing it back out there, he's back in the area. But those yellowtail only stick around for a couple seconds, right? So it's very important to have a bait there when they're there, right? So we troll 3 rods, 1 off each side, 1 guy down the middle, right? And then the other guy has his rod in his hand. Someone gets bit, he's like, okay, this rod's bit. He's out getting in the water right there and doing his retrieve. So we did that kind of thing, and then at the end of the day, we got pukey points, and there's birds following yellowtail, so we just started following the birds around and making long casts into there. We ended up catching 16 yellowtail that day. Taking 3rd place by, I think we missed 3rd place by 4 ounces. One of our yellowtail was bit in half by a freaking seal. So the seal basically screwed us out of 2nd place. And we also had a big yellowtail taken at the boat by a seal. So we actually got 17 yellowtail that day. But the seal kind of screwed us out of that. But, so we took 3rd place, right? So we talking to the guys that won. They only caught 3 yellowtail, but there's yellowtail were 40 and 50 pounds on live back or up low. Then the other guys, most anyone else caught was 6 yellowtail. So we more than doubled the amount of yellowtail we caught of any of the 75 boats out fishing yellowtail with just hookup baits. So that just kind of proves I'm not lying. Hookup baits absolutely crush yellowtail. I go to Cedros Island a lot with a lot of buddies, a lot of friends, and they're throwing the butterfly. And Cedros Island's a lot of that yo-yo fishing, right? Deep yo-yo yellowtail fishing, and they're throwing the heavy irons, the butterfly jigs, and they're cranking their butts off. I'm doing about half the speed, half the work, and I'm 3 to 5 to with them, 3 to 5 to 1 on them every single time. Usually after about 5 yellowtail, they're like, "Give me one of those. I want to put one of those on." Yeah, right. And that happens over many trips, with many different people over the last 5 years. So it's not just a one-time thing. It happens every single time.
What color for yellowtail?
This one, that's the new one. Well, it's the new one we just put out. We've been using it for a little while.
And what's it called?
It's called Midnight. So that's a really good color for the yellowtail. But again, for that yo-yo fishing, that Seadrill or yo-yo fishing, like right now would be at the Coronados, the mint and sardine 3 ounce, that 3 ounce one, the new one, that Seadrill was my absolute favorite one to fish. That sinks fast. You can cast it a mile. On this rod, I can cast it even 2 ounce, or even this one, very far. This is my old jig stick. I bought this when I worked at Turner's when I was 19 years old on my Turner's discount. And it was a jig stick, 9-foot jig stick. And when I started Hookup Baits and seen how effective the Hookup Baits work on a spinning reel, then actually how well the spinning reels work nowadays, I actually had it converted to a spinning rod. So it is a yellowtail jig stick converted to a spinning rod jig stick. So it works very well. Always fill your reels to the absolute most line you can put on them with a braid. Your reels are going to perform better. You're going to get a better sink. You're going to get a better cast. Just all the way around. Usually get the guy at Turner's, when he stops, tell him to keep going 3 times. That's what I got in general. They always want to stop. You say, keep going. They'll go, woo. How's that? Keep going. Woo. You know, after the 3rd time, you're like, okay, that's good. So, all right. So put it all the way full, almost even is where you want that. And plus braided line. Everyone's fishing braided line, right? Right? Okay. Don't fish mono anymore. Braided line has been the best thing that came to our fishing, helping us catch fish over the last decade than anything else. So I've been fishing braided line. I went to braided line probably 15 years ago. And I've used every knot out there for braided line. And it's actually my tournament partner that came up with this knot because we got sick of breaking things off, especially during tournament, using these double rigs, fishing deep structure. You get snapped. The worst thing about fishing braided line was that connection knot was always the weak point, right? Now you break that off, tie a new leader on, tie a new swivel on, tie 2 more leaders on. During tournaments, it was taking way too much time every time we broke off. So it was actually my tournament partner started playing with the other knots. I was tying the RP at that time. And the RP was breaking every single time. But my buddy started tying the FG knot. He no longer would break off his leaders, like ever. It would be a knot to the swivel or a knot to the bait. I'm like, wow, you're onto something there. You're only tying 1 leader a day. Well, I'm still tying 4 to 5 leaders a day, right? And so I started using it. Sure enough, fix it. Now the whole team uses the FG knot. We never break our leaders off, ever. It is very strong, very proven. And it's, every one of us tie it a different way too. It's kind of funny. We all tie it, there's like 8 people on our team. We all tie it differently, but they all never break. So you got, remember FG, freaking good knot. People are like, what's FG stand for? I don't know, freaking good knot, I guess. And it just happens to be the thinnest. You can feel it right here if you want after the seminar, but very thin and there's no tag ends. All right, so FG knot. And what I like to do, when you got about the amount of line you're going to have out to cast, right? You're going to launch this thing, I'm about right there. You want that knot between the reel and the guide. The worst place to put that knot is inside your spool. It's going to be causing problems for you. It's going to pull the line off and make wind knots. It's going to catch your line while it's coming off there. Absolute worst place to put a knot is in your spool. The second worst place to put a knot is about right in there, up in your smaller guides. Then you end up doing a lot of this kind of stuff, trying to shake it loose so it feels free when you cast, right? If it's right here, can't even see the thing. Right here. So here's my knot right here. Right? If it's between your reel and that first guide, when you cast, it has momentum. It flies through those guides. You don't even feel it. Plus, it gives you a nice, healthy 8-foot piece or so piece of line. The fish won't be leery of your braid. That's another thing, never fish a hookup bait on braid. It is not a reaction bait. Only baits you get away with that with is reaction baits. Hookup baits is not a reaction bait. They're eating your hookup bait because they think it's the real deal. So you're going to fish it like you're fishing a live sardine, right? Same kind of, you're going to use the lightest line you can get away with, you know, fluorocarbon, long leader, all that stuff is going to help you get bit. I've tried it with trout and I've tried it with calico bass where you catch a stock trout like crazy and you break the leader off, they'll still eat it. No, they won't. You go from every cast to every third or fifth cast. Then I had it with calico bass, just going nuts, eating it. They'll eat it straight braid. Again, same. You go from every cast to every fifth cast. It makes a huge difference.
So you're going straight, fluorocarbon to the braid?
What is that?
Yeah, this is
You
Florida.
didn't tell us.
Huh?
What is pound?
This is 40 pounds. So my yellowtail, this is my standard yellowtail. I do 40 pound. I do I believe this is 60 pound max quattro to 40 pound fluoro is my standard yellowtail setup. Those are 50 pound max quattro to, so let me explain, I forgot to show you something. So on this double rig, I do this on all my double rigs. So it goes 50 pound max quattro, 40 pound either trilene green, trilene, just regular mono.
Fluoro or just regular?
Just regular polymer, whatever they call it, mono. Regular mono, and then right here I'll go 20 to 25 pound below the swivel. So both these leaders will be 20 or 25 pound, 40 pound above it. I get people like, why do you even tie a leader there? Why don't you just tie your straight braid there? You could do that, but then it only gives you this much leader before you braid, right? That can spook fish. But then also, with the braid is really, especially the max quattro because it's so thin and it's really limp, when these baits are falling, they're doing all this kind of stuff, right? They'll come above these swivels sometimes. I notice when I'm straight tied braid there, it'll hang up above the swivel more often,
On the
right?
knot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you have a leader here where they're more stiff and it doesn't seem to hang up on the line more, I rarely get caught above the swivel when I have a leader here, a heavier leader here. Then also, it happens all the time. Last year I caught 5 yellowtail over 30 pounds by this time of year. So it's January to this time of year. I was fishing a lot last year. This is when all the home guards come out. And a lot of times just bass fishing, I was catching 30 and 40 pounds. Frank got a 41 pounder. 44. Out bass fishing with a double rig, right? So one of us hooked up to a yellowtail. We've hooked yellowtail on these double rigs all the time. And yellowtail acts just like a calico. Once you get on yellowtail, another yellowtail is going to find this bait. And it happens every single time. We have never caught 2 yellowtail before at one time. It's not going to happen. They pull way too hard for the rig to handle. But you'll always come back with either 1 yellowtail and no bait or nothing at all. You're going to lose them both. But not recommended for yellowtail or white sea bass. Anything that pulls harder than white sea bass, don't use a double rig for, right? So also we start catching yellowtail. It's a simple cut off that, tie your yellowtail jig on, and now this rod is turned in from a double rig rod to a yellowtail rod, just like that, right? So there's 2 reasons to tie a leader to this, to the swivel.
Where's the failure when you have hooked up on 2 yellowtail? Is it at the FG knot or is it the
It's
swivel,
it's usually this knot or the knot to the bait. You come back with a yellowtail and a leader, or just a yellowtail and no leader, or you come back with everything on. We got time for questions real quick, or are we out of time?
Go ahead and ask some questions.
Okay, we'll give you a pack of baits for every good question.
What about if you already
What do you
asked
like
a good
for
question?
me?
Yeah, we'll get you. That was a good question.
I tend to run mine pretty short because sometimes they'll get tangled up.
Uh-huh.
It looks like you run yours a little bit longer than I run mine, and I was just curious.
Oh, this is actually short.
Is it? Okay, so you like them longer,
Yeah,
just
see,
spreading out more room to,
It just gives them more room to swim.
Okay.
You know, if you make it when they're shorter, they go like this, and then they max out, and then they got turned.
Yeah.
And then they max out. When they're longer, then they go way out. You know what I mean? So, and plus, you got to keep a clean line, especially with sand bass. They like to roll in the line. They rough up that line. If that line doesn't look shiny like this line when you hold it, and it's not have that shiny sheen, you cut that piece off. That's not shiny no more. That's going to affect bites. So with a longer leader, you got more times of doing that before that leader's too short.
So how long are the leaders on the double, the longest? And
Okay, here's my standard when I make a double rig. I tie the first one on,
yeah.
and then I go, whoop, right? Cut that, tie that bait on, and then the second one I tie on, then I still have it on the spool. I just hold it up and I go with the spool until I'm about 3 inches above the other one, and then cut that one, then I tie the other one on. So the first one's just the arm length. And it's not like a wide arm length, it's kind of like a, Not a.
When you get chewed up from the bass on their teeth, you retie them or just cut them off and retie them or
The baits themselves or the line?
the line?
Yeah, definitely. Always have a clean line. That's huge. I always feeling after every bass, I'm feeling it, and then I'm looking at it. If it don't have that shiny look to it, it's not doing what it's supposed to do.
What kind of knot are you using on the swivel?
To the swivel and to the baits is double improved clinch knot. So that's one thing. I've worked really hard to make the profile of these baits look really good. I worked hard to make the baits, the profile, the length, and the width is all correct. Every fish in the world is silver on the bottom, dark on the top. Every one of our baits are. We have lateral lines on every one of our baits. Eyeballs, realistic eyeballs. So I worked really hard to make the bait look really good. And then you tie a big old double San Diego knot on top of it. Kind of screws that profile on, right? Or a lot of people like to use those speed clips nowadays. That also screws. I've never seen a fish swim around with a clip hanging out their forehead, right? And so, but then also those clips, and a lot of people like to do the Rapala knot or the loop knots. Also, that lets the bait roll over too much. When the bait rolls, it takes glide and dart out of the bait actually too.
Say the name of the knot.
The double improved clinch knot. Through the eye of the hook, twist it 5 or 6 times, through the bottom loop, out the top loop. Very simple. Make sure you lick it.
I was gonna tell you, you only use spinning reels, because I was talking to Ben Seacrest the other day at one of the expos, and he was telling me that he uses like the Lexus, or he uses even his Accurate Valiant, and he's killing the rock cod, but does it give it a different action than with a spinning reel, or how does that work, you know?
So, you're going to get a faster sink with a spinning reel, right? Especially full of braid. As soon as you open that reel, the line's falling off the reel. There's no way you're going to make the casting reel spin that fast, and the line just falling off the spool, right? So the more free your fall is, the more swim that bait is going to have. With a casting reel, it's having to spin that spool. So you'll never have line laying on the water, unless you're sitting there like feeding it out. But who wants to sit there and fish like this all day, right?
Yeah.
So you'll never have lines laying on the water. You're always going to have a direct line. So when that bait is falling, it's actually falling back towards you. And with a spinning reel, it's falling straight down.
Okay.
That's the main difference. That's why we do spinning reels, just to get that more natural, little bit faster fall. And it's all, the one difference is or Ben's been fishing for
he's been,
he's a great friend of mine. We fish a lot together. For so long we've been fishing by feel. Where casting reels you fish all by feel. Where spinning reels you fish all by vision, line watching. That line is telling you everything. That little 1 to 3 feet of line laying on the water tells you everything you want to know. When you see that line going out, it's going to start to pulse. As soon as that line goes, boop, that's a fish. A lot of people, that's called blinking on the sink. See, that's one more thing. Your bait will come back like this.
Good.
Right? The only time that happens is when a fish eats it and spits it out without you knowing it, or you might have known it. But I take out kids and vetting fishing on my boat all the time. They're like, hey, my bait fouled up. Your bait will never foul up. You can't make these things foul up. That means a fish came up, ate it, and went twit. And he came back with that, right? And that's by not watching your line, not reading your line.
Hey, quick question, back here.
Yeah.
So, like the first thing that I recognized about that setup was, I'm gonna see it tangle like crazy. So what I think I heard was you have a heavier leader on top.
Yes.
So it's kind of like the
It stiffens it up. Yeah, the heavier line on top stiffens up the setup, so it doesn't tangle as much. But it's because the baits just do, if the baits sank and did all this, like spinning like most baits, where they kind of do this all the way down, it'll tangle. But the baits do this, nice natural glide, they're not spinning around and get all crazy. And so that kind of keeps everything nice and clean and natural looking. Really, fishing the double rig is just like fishing one bait. You rarely get tangled up. We'll reel in 2 fish from 400 feet, rockfish, from 200 feet up. They're both doing helicopters all the way up, right? The most you gotta do is pick up one bait, shake it 3 times, and it unspins the swivel, you throw it back in the water. Very simple.
You said the heavier bait goes down faster
Yeah,
than 2 baits, so the one's not gonna swim the same way.
yeah, the one's just gonna be falling. So this one's gonna be doing the glide, that one's just gonna be
And you're saying the upper one is at,
I always do the lighter one on top because it's gonna be on top when it sinks. You know what I mean?
right, but the leader,
Wait, you said.
The leader's the same.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, under the swivel, it's 20/20 or 25/25.
Let's do one more question, then after that question, then you guys can ask all the questions during the break.
We'll do it, Raleigh.
White sea bass.
Like see this.
Before sunup.
That the 3-ounce, the new one, the 3-ounce chub.
Single hook.
3-ounce chub, yeah. Single
By
hook.
itself, right?
By itself. Never put a piece of squid on a hook of it. But we have the mermaid smell. So a lot of people, they do this. Our baits are very popular up in Central California for rock fishing and the sea bass up there and all that. And everyone was in the habit of putting a piece of squid, because everything they do up there is they put a piece of squid on. Right? The shrimp flies and everything, they put a piece of squid. A hookup bait, you're killing everything. All the magic with a hookup bait, you're killing it with a piece of squid. It already looks real. They already thinking it's real. Now it's got a piece of squid hooked to its dorsal fin, right? Now all that glide, you just put a parachute on that glide, right? And all that dart, when you reel it in, you put a parachute on all that dart. Only thing you're doing, you're ruining the action, but you're adding a little bit of scent to it. If you add our scent, which is made to go inside the bait, we have it in the bottle, consistency, you fill the body of the bait, gives you all the scent you're ever going to need, adds color to the bait, has a ton of glitter in it, adds a scale trail, and it doesn't affect the action at all. So that's what you want to do if you do add scent, add our mermaid smell. We'll add a piece of squid.